Hi, hello, everybody. I hope you are well today. So, what we're doing today is we are going to be getting back into a little bit more, I guess, typical world studies stuff. We're going to be starting our Unit 3, which Unit 2 feels like it ended 1.5 million years ago. But we've been busy working on our projects, as you guys have, again, seen that come and go at this point. And we're going to kind of set that off to the side for a little bit, and we're going to focus on some new information, some new stuff going forward. We're going to be talking about India, if my map didn't give you a little bit of a clue here. As far as this again unit goes, it's obviously going to be a little bit different, but certain elements are going to be the same. I'm going to be posting lectures every couple of days. Again, sometimes back to back. Again, regardless, it's something that you should be checking Classroom anyways every day for reminders or updates, whatever's happening. Today it'll be a first lecture, and then you won't hear from me again until Wednesday when we move on to the next thing. But with that said and done, we're just going to kind of dive right in and start this unit up just like we always had. For this, again, starting us fresh here, is I'm going to start with a little bit of a preview, and then we're going to get into some notes. The notes themselves is something that you should definitely consider taking into your notebooks. If we come back all together, you're going to want to have it all in the same place. Again, if you prefer to just print these notes off yourself, also totally fine. That's your call in this new virtual world we're living. All right. So, as I said, Unit 3, we're looking at a preview here. So, we're going to be discussing India in this next unit. We're just moving east on the world map, basically, from the Middle East. And the first thing that I want to talk about with you guys, one that's very important, excuse me, is the fact that the study aid is still going to be something you're held accountable for across this unit. When it comes right down to it, you're going to have more time. We're going to take this at a slower pace than we normally would. So when we're looking at this particular unit of study aid, you have until April 24th, which will be the day of your Unit 3 test. And yes, you will still have tests in here. What they look like is still kind of up in the air, but you're going to definitely want to pay attention to for that. I will obviously remind you often. You get to decide what format you want to try. If you did really poorly on your last study aid and your last test, try a different method. Again, all of your study aids have to be electronic. There isn't anything you can do by hand, unfortunately, because I can't check any of that stuff. So you got to turn it in correctly when it's all finished to turnitin.com. And again, as much as you guys probably dislike it, that's not going away. It's actually going to become more prevalent as we go through the unit. So Turnitin.com is a simple final step to get things submitted to me so that I can make sure you're doing your own work and that work is of good quality, right? Without being in class together, again, I feel like I'm always talking to a brick wall about this, but you really need to take more time to prepare yourselves for these tests. Again, a lot of your study aids are fine. They lack a lot of detail often, and again, I'm not, as of right now, planning to do any formal checks, but I will remind you constantly to work on this throughout the process. So after each lecture or after the end of the week or something, go back and see what terms we've covered. I'll usually point them out to you as I go through these lectures so that you can kind of keep track of things and work on them as you go. It's just I don't want you to be working hours and hours on this at the last second. Again, most of these key terms can get finished up in 5, maybe 10 minutes at a crack. And that's a lot easier than trying to do 20 of them all at the last possible second. Again, I'm still seeing a lot of really weak effort with these study aids. You need more than one thing for each key term. The what is it and why is it important? That why is it important is so much more necessary for you to do well on tests than just the what is the Ganges River, which is something that you might have to think about here. But again, it needs to be the how does it impact India? Why is it important to India? That's the question you need to keep asking yourself. Without these, again, you'll never improve your test scores, and this semester will continue to be a struggle. So please take that seriously. If you didn't grab out your notebooks before, now is the time because we're going to get into it, talking about the first learning objective of this unit, which is always the same, and that is geography. So, India is a whole subcontinent. It is the largest singular piece of land that we have talked about in a while, I suppose. Again, with this whole process, India itself is made up of a lot of different types of geography. It's very diverse. It is both diverse in culture, but also in geography. As of right now, there's over 110 languages being spoken in India with more than 1,000 dialects. The geography is just as well diverse, and a lot of the different groups are because of this geography, knowing that the way that the landscape is in a place has a lot of impact on, again, what and how people are going to develop and settlements and things like that. So for these notes, it's similar to what we would have done in class, where I'm going to talk to you about these, and then the impact itself I'll talk a little bit about, but I'm hoping you'll be able to put and add your own information to it as well. So with the Himalayas, I'm hoping you've heard of them. They are going to be a huge mountain chain that is going to be at the northern border of India. They're the highest mountains in the world. Everest is part of the Himalayas. And when we've talked about mountains before, one of the biggest things that we talk about is protection. So, as far as in this idea of impact goes, the Himalayas are going to keep the people of India safe from outsiders. The other thing to consider with impact of the Himalayas is how they're going to keep the people of India isolated. Their approach and their culture is distinct to that of the people of the Middle East and the people of what we'll talk about with China and Southeast Asia. And a lot of that has to do with it. It's hard to make contact with the Himalayas kind of capping off the subcontinent itself. The Himalayas, of course, also provide a lot of water to the rivers of India, which helps in a lot of instances. Speaking of rivers, we're going to talk about the Ganges. The Ganges is south of the Himalayas on the eastern side of the subcontinent, and there is a Ganges River Valley with really rich soil. Impact, thinking this is going to definitely be a place where people settle because you can grow a lot of food, you have access to fresh water, and you have access to trade. The Ganges River is also going to take on, similar to the Nile River, some more cultural importance to the religions that develop, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the unit. So the fact that the Ganges River becomes sacred or an integral part of Indian life is something to keep in mind as we move on. Then we've got the Indus River Valley. It's just on the western side below the Himalayas. The Indus River Valley is going to be where the first civilization of India develops, and it's very similar. It's got a moderate climate, so it's a little bit more comfortable of a place. Impact wise, it means that people are not going to have to struggle to, again, survive. They're not going to have to become super creative in their adaptability. And then rich soil, of course, creates a lot of fresh food, which allows for population to grow. And of course, so we've got the fact that the river here has got fresh water. The Himalayas are going to feed right into the Indus River, which allows for it to be, again, always prevalent. There's no issues of drought. And the access to trade is definitely there. With both of the rivers also provide protection. So we're this idea that people are going to be able to settle and be safe. It's very important to the people of India. Moving on, we've got the Deccan Plateau. This is a huge central piece of the subcontinent. From the Ganges River south to basically the tip is going to be this plot of land which is risen up. Again, a plateau, of course, is like a higher elevation, a mountain with the top chopped off. It's relatively hilly. It's dry as far as the climate goes. Impact here is we're going to see a very different kind of agriculture start to grow. They have to adapt to the types of food that they can grow here. This, of course, having a higher elevation allows for protection, being able to spot people coming your way. Higher elevation is also going to impact, again, like I said, the agriculture, the types of food. I apologize, that's repetitive. Overall, the Deccan Plateau is something that is widespread. Again, it's a easier to traverse on top, but it is still something that is difficult to be able to cross very quickly. We've got the coastline. The subcontinent is, again, basically like a giant peninsula because there is water surrounding three sides of it. It is shaped kind of like a triangle, so I guess it's more or less two sides of it. But all of that coastline is got lush, again, plains that go along from the beaches. So it's a very almost tropical climate. And when we're looking at this process, all of that coastline, it has access to water and to food, thinking fish, has an impact on the type of food that is going to be consumed by the Indian people, that's for sure, the diet that they have. Having all of that coastline, of course, allows for trade and exploration. Again, protection is a bit tougher with long coastlines, but you can see people coming. That's definitely a good thing. Overall, the trade is probably the most important piece of that to keep in mind as we go forward. Then we've got monsoons. So monsoons are a weather pattern that you guys have heard of before. I suppose people see it's like monsooning out there, but the actual idea of a monsoon you probably have never heard of, and it's a seasonal wind pattern. Wind is the important part of that. And it's not, again, isolated to Southern Asia, but it's definitely more prevalent there than it is other places. There are two different monsoon seasons. There is the summer and then there's the winter. From June to September, the winds are going to blow from south southwest, and so thinking down at the bottom from the Arabian and Indian Ocean, and those winds are going to basically come off of the water. And once they are coming off of the water like that, they bring all of this moisture, and that causes really heavy rainfall, especially on the west coast. So the western coast of India is just going to get hit with rain and rain and rain and rain. From October to February, the winter monsoons, the pattern reverses. So the winds are coming from the north northeast, and they're going to bring a ton of rainfall to the east coast of India. Northeast India is considered the wettest place on earth. They get so much rain. So when we think about impact here, you have to think about the idea of how do you adapt to this? If you have whole months of your life where it's going to rain, what do you have to do to get around that? So, one way, of course, is you have to figure out how to make your shelter monsoon proof. So building it up and trying to create some kind of structure that isn't going to get blown away or damaged during the heavy rains. Of course, that has an impact on the type of agriculture that you can have. When things are flooding out, it is hard to be able to maintain agriculture. So, what do you do to survive through that time if you can't farm? Meg, and you got to think about the idea of clothing. It's definitely a part of that. Settlement, what kind of services are provided by the people around you? What kind of protection are you going to have? Overall, it's going to just impact the daily lives of Indians very much so, and they have to adapt as quickly as they possibly can. So that's it. That's all of our notes for the beginning of Unit 3. You can put your notebooks away, and then what you're going to want to have out is your planner or where you're writing down and keeping track of all the stuff that you've got to do. At the end of every PowerPoint that I provide you guys, you're going to have an official work to be completed slide. This is something that I'm going to create to help kind of keep you on track so that there's no questions about what is due and when it's due and all that jazz. So the first reminder right off the bat is to keep checking Classroom, and you should every day, again in the morning sometime, take a look, see what kind of lectures there might be, or if there's an assignment. Reminders will be there every day. Work to be completed by the end of school tomorrow is your first Unit 3 assignment. This is going to be a map and table activity. It's something that'll be on Classroom with all the directions there for you. And again, you're going to submit your final product to turnitin.com. Again, all assignments going forward are going to get submitted through here. Of course, that is both to make sure you're doing your own work, that work isn't being copied off of something online, that it is something that you're creating and you're creating yourself. Again, you need to submit it before the end of the school day. So please, like I said, write this down. Say that this has to get done sometime today or tomorrow to get that finished. It's something that's pretty straightforward and something similar to what we've done in the past. So just again, get to work on it and let me know if you have questions. If you missed that window, you got to email me right away and we'll talk about the process of getting things submitted late. The other thing that I'm going to remind you every time we have a work to be completed slide is your study aid. Again, you'll see this posted to Classroom again today alongside with all of this other information. Remember